Hi, and welcome to Real Life Moms. I'm your host, Lisa Foster. And Real Life Moms is a podcast that's all about connecting moms through real parenting conversations. I believe that moms have so much insight and knowledge, and together we are powerful. On this podcast, we give moms a voice to tell their stories, share their expertise and resources through real conversations. And this week, I'm talking with Donna Tetreault. She's a national parenting journalist, an award-winning author, speaker, and a nonprofit founder. You may have seen her on NBC News, The Today Show, Dr. Phil, The Doctors, and The Talk on CBS. And today, Donna is here to discuss her new book, The C.A.S.T.L.E Method. Hi, Donna. Welcome to Real Life Moms. I am honored to have you here on the show today as we are going to discuss your new book, The C.A.S.T.L.E Method. So first of all, thank you for sending it to me. I did get to read it, and I loved how you took some concrete research around certain parenting topics, and you mixed it with some real life stories, which made it just so easy to read. So I really enjoyed it, and just thank you for coming and talking to us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Maybe we could just start with a little bit more about you and your background.
Out of college, out of UCLA, I went straight back to school and got my teaching credential. And I was a teacher for a few years here in Los Angeles for the LA Unified School District. And I taught kinder, first, fourth, and fifth. And then I moved on into TV reporting. And the TV reporting was really general assignment reporting for a good, I'd say 20 years. And then I had my two kids, two boys who are now 14 and 15 years old. And I kind of took a break from reporting, but then quickly realized I had a lot to learn about parenting. And I thought, I'm going to use my skill set, get back into reporting and just go into this niche parenting reporting. And that's what I've been doing for about the last 12 years. And it's just something that I really enjoy. I like learning about all this evidence-based information that we now have available to us as parents, which is really helpful to so many. So that's kind of where I'm at, and work for NBC now. They have a segment called Modern Parenting on their national show called News Daily, NBC News Daily, and on their streaming service. And so that's kind of what I'm doing at this point. And also I've written a couple children's books. One is called Dear Me, Letters to Myself for All of My Emotions, to teach young kids how to manage and identify their emotions. And that is evidence-based. And I have a new Dear Me coming out called Dear Me, I Belong, which is part of the Dear Me series.
Oh, wow. You do so much. And I love that you had kids and then decided to do like reporting with parenting. How smart, because now like you can learn all the good stuff from like all the experts, right?
Exactly.
So can you tell us exactly what the C.A.S.T.L.E method is?
Sure. So like I said, for the past about 10 plus years, I've been talking to experts in this field, psychologists, doctors, educators, researchers, and interviewing them. And I compiled basically what I believe to be some foundational building blocks to raising kids and teens and really a family in this generation. And so CASTLE is an acronym used as a metaphor to build the castle or the family of your dreams, not the perfect family, but the best version of your unique family. And I really believe that these principles, they're pretty foundational, and they seem like when you talk about them like CASTLE, it's compassion, acceptance, security, trust, love, expectations plus education. And even though they sound like they're kind of these general concepts, once you dive into what the research says about these concepts, it's really important. I think it is brings an awareness to your parenting and really to just building this family that you're building for the first time. I mean, we're expected to kind of learn how to just have this family and parent, and there's a lot that goes into it.
Now, in your book, you put C first, you put compassion first, because you think it's the foundation, right, for a strong, happy family. Can you talk a little bit about like what compassion really means to you and like why you feel it's that foundation of the castle?
Absolutely. I mean, compassion to me is really the main principle that then can carry throughout all of your parenting, whether you're talking about acceptance, security, and on. Compassion really is more than empathy. So when you think about empathy, you're putting yourself in another's shoes. Compassion is that empathy, but then working to alleviate the quote suffering of another, whether it's yourself, whether it's your child, your spouse. And so when you talk about compassion, it's kind of where you start, and then there's the chaos that ensues, whether you're talking about a behavior or a situation, but then you end in compassion, because again, none of us is perfect. No kid is perfect, no parent is perfect, no family is perfect, and so we're going to be in the chaos. But if we can start with compassion and end with compassion, we're going to build bonds, we're going to build that connected ness that we all desire from each other. And really compassion to me is foundational.
And you mentioned a little bit, but the self-compassion too, that piece. How do you do that? How do you do that within your family? Because I'm just going, you now have teens as well. I have teens. And especially for that age, that self-compassion, it's hard.
It's really hard. Yeah. And when I do talk about compassion in the book, I self-compassion is just as crucial. So self-compassion meaning for us as parents, knowing that even when we blow up, we're doing the best that we can, pulling ourselves back and saying, I am doing the best that I can. I'm articulating that. I'm knowing that I'm learning just as this child is learning in their journey. And then when we show ourselves self-compassion, we are modeling that for our kids. And that is something that, you know, we see with all the statistics now with what our tweens and teens are going through. Girls 1 in 3 who are not feeling good about themselves and want to harm themselves, and boys and bullying and all that comes around with it, social media. So we really have to be modeling this self-compassion for our kids to be able to then have their own self-compassion. And so if we don't teach them that, they're going to get outside sources teaching them what we don't want. We want them to be coming to us to understand how to take care of themselves.
And it is hard. I feel like I do model because I'm like the first one to kind of like just laugh at myself, and if there's a mistake, I mean, I'm owning up to it, and I have no problem saying, whoops, that's happened, let's just do something else, you know. But
I love that. And what is the reaction to your
well, I was gonna say, I was gonna say, because now my teen pops in, but I guess there's so many outside influences that our teens are seeing, our kids are seeing, that I don't know if I'm enough, you know, to model it, because my daughter, on the other hand, you know, she compares herself to so many others that are, you know, better, and she doesn't, like, she thinks everyone's better or doing something better or prettier or whatever. And yeah, she can make a mistake and own up to it and laugh a little bit, but you could see it's painful. And I think it's painful because of all those other teens watching that aren't showing self-compassion. She's not getting it from her peers. She's only getting it from maybe the family. What do you say to that? Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally makes sense. And I totally get it, because I have 2 teen boys who are very hard on themselves, especially when it comes to sports and things like that. But ultimately, I think that this is not a one and done modeling. This is practice, 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 day in, day out, hour in, hour out, and hoping and praying that our kids will gain enough of this modeling so that when they do go out into the real world, they can tap back into it. Look, it isn't easy, you know, but it is a practice, and it's something that I believe, if there is that awareness within the parents and the kids have this awareness where you're actually saying, are you practicing self-compassion?
Mm-hmm.
Being compassionate to yourself. And even if they give you the eye roll, it's okay. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
make a difference. They're going to remember it. So, what I like to say is, even just as a former teacher, it's not a one and done. And it is just this practice that is part of our family unit, part of our value system.
Yes, yes. And I don't use those words, like I might be modeling some of it, but I don't really put it to words. So I think actually discussing the concept of compassion and self-compassion might be a step that I've missed out on. So
I
I
think
think I could add that.
I think it is really important to articulate it. I think that when we're thinking about teaching our kids, the modeling is imperative, but if they don't understand the concepts at a foundational basis, then all the modeling we do may not just sink in. So I do think, especially with teens, but even with little kids, when they're being hard on themselves, maybe playing in a soccer game and they let the goal in, they're the goalie and they let the goal in and they're being hard on themselves, and just getting down to their level and just saying, can you be more compassionate to yourself? What do you
Mm-hmm.
think you can do to make yourself feel better? And it's okay to feel the way you're feeling right now. I don't want to take away from that. But once they've, identified, felt their feelings, then we do need to move on to that self-compassion element where we can say, so what were some of the good things that you did in that game? Turning it around.
Yeah, that's a great way of modeling it. And I have to look back in my own journey if I've done any of that. I'm sure I have, but I
Sure.
can't think of it offhand. But yeah, I think that's a great way of modeling it and putting it in there. Because I do think, especially as these kids get older, their just self-worth is just starts to diminish a little bit. So, and we have conversations all the time about how, especially with my daughter being a teen, I have a son as well, but he's different. Boys are a little bit different in my
Mhm.
household.
Mhm.
But my daughter, we have a lot of conversations of really fixing the inside, not getting the validation on the outside, but really has to come within her. And so we talk a lot about that because we'll give her examples. Like, for instance, we went college shopping and her friends were also college shopping, not with her, but all around. Everybody went on spring break and it seemed like everybody was looking at colleges. And her friends also had photos of the beach and photos of this. And she's like, oh, I wish I was having a vacation like that, like feeling bad about herself and bad about what we were doing. And then she came back and she told everyone how she saw like 7 colleges in 4 days and other people saw 1 or 2. And they're like, oh my God, that's so impressive. So they were like, feeling the way she was feeling about the photos. And I was like, see, it's just a different lens. I said, but you need to look inside. You can't keep looking at somebody else's experiences and feeling bad, because you're always going to feel bad that your experience isn't enough compared to theirs. And so we had this whole inner conversation. It's a work in progress.
No, I love that. And I would say this too, is when within the love chapter with me, it's in the Castle method, I do talk about self-love as leveling up on self-esteem. Because like you were talking about, getting all these outside influence is what is self-esteem. And
Mm-hmm.
when we look inward and teach our kids about self-love and accepting ourselves as exactly who we are, maybe we have that nose that we don't like, but just being in acceptance and self-love that is who we are. And so it's interesting because social media has changed this landscape for our kids, and it's tough for them to not be on it. And
Mm-hmm.
but that message that you're giving to your daughter is exactly the message I try to give to my boys, which is, yes, that is all going on around you, but what is going on inside of you? And like with your daughter, what did you accomplish? You saw 7 colleges, so you're that much more informed and have this wealth of knowledge. And so it's just kind of reframing this for our kids. And we can't do it all the time because they don't really want to listen to us all the time, especially teens. But
Mm-hmm.
again, that message of self-love, leveling up on the self-esteem.
And going to your chapter of love, there was a little aha moment for me. when I was reading your book. You talk about passions and the things our kids are interested in. And I never realized how important passions were. I mean, I knew that it's great that your kid was interested in soccer or dance or reading or whatever, but I didn't realize it's what kind of brings them out of a bad day, that they'll go back to those passions as an outlet, like even later on in the real world. So I felt like that was a big aha moment for me, because I was like, oh, yeah, I can see that with my kids. Like, when they come home from school and they did not have a great day. I mean, my son, his passion is gaming. Can have a discussion about that after, but go off and he'll blow off steam with gaming. But it grounds him. It changes his personality. He may have come home kind of a little annoyed and comes out happy. Same with my daughter. She might go sing or dance or do something in her room, but that's her passion. And she has it as a tool.
Yeah. And the research really supports this to
Mm-hmm.
really help our kids find what is intrinsic to them, what brings them joy. You can have all these different hobbies that make you who you are, but it has to be intrinsic to the child. And so when that happens, they are in their most joy. When they're inspired, I mean, literally in spirit. Inspired means you're in your spirit. It's an intrinsic joyfulness for you. And so setting out this buffet of, you could do soccer, you could do dance, you could do this, you could do gaming, you could do whatever, you could do coding. It's what brings that person joy. And
Mm-hmm.
when people age, that people will go back to what their joy was.
I think it's so important, because I think as parents, and you could tell me your perspective of this, but at least from my own experience, it's like I lost my passions. Like I got so involved in parenting. I'm a working mom. I have other things going on. I obviously have a podcast, but I lost my passions. Like when someone would ask me like, "Oh, what do you like to do?" after I became a parent, a little into it, I was like, I don't know if I was shocked that people were asking me what I like, or even asking me a question about myself. But the actual passion piece, just like I lost it. And so also I think reminding kids that it's important to always have them and to keep them and to refine them or rekindle them along your whole life. Because if it is what brings you joy, we need to keep doing those things, or different things, but doing things that bring us joy.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I feel like that too as a mom, that I kind of lost part of what brought me joy. And I feel like I noticed it, and I knew that I needed to kind of figure it out, but I was kind of in the mud of being a young mom, trying to figure things out. And I think that it's okay for us to be in that spot for as long as we need to be. As a young mom, I was very worried. I felt myself worrying. I think it's in my DNA from my mom.
Mm-hmm.
She was a worrier. And, but going to kind of that mode of self-compassion and knowing that at that time I was doing the best that I could. I was, I was in deep with the two of them. They're a year and 4 days apart. And I just felt like I needed to put my time there. But then ultimately I did come out of it. And I think that, especially for a lot of young moms, when you talk about guilt, mom guilt, it's just present. But for even younger moms and newer moms, that's even more. That's what the statistics show us. So just knowing where you are in your journey and knowing that you will come out of it.
Yes.
But it can be challenging.
Yes, for sure, for sure. I want to go over to if you don't mind, skipping over to your your trust in your castle. All right, I have to say, this story in your book, and I don't want to give too much away in your book, but was very touching to me, about your son who was watching this movie. You guys were all out to the movie theater, and you were watching a movie, and he, I guess, was a little afraid. So he wanted to leave the theater. And I think you went out with him and you left your other half in the movie theater. And you were kind of coaxing him to say, like, oh, no, it's fine. You can go back in. But he was just like, pretty much like, no, I'm not going back in. And
Yeah.
you did, and right. And you decided to leave the movie. And on his way out, going into wherever the car or something, he's turned to you and said, thank you for respecting me.
Yeah.
And that, I was like, huh. That was another huh moment for me, I guess, because I mean, I see myself in so many situations where it's like, oh, you don't want to play that soccer game. You're like crying on the side. No, no, go finish it. Go finish it. You have to go finish it. Or, so many times, right? There's so many incidents of that type of thing occurred. And, you get so caught up in this parenting, like, what decision should I make? If I make this decision, what am I teaching them? If I make that decision, and then you're also like, well, people are looking at me, and
Oh,
I don't want to be a bad mom.
oh
And
yes.
so, yeah, so it was really refreshing and comforting. And it just was so nice to see that you listened to your child and that he also noticed that you listened. Because I think when we're pushing our kids back, and I've done this, I have done this, they're not feeling seen, they're not feeling heard. And that is terrible.
Yeah, look, I think that this happens a lot with all of us. We have these expectations in our head about, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what is this going to look like to the outside world? And I think that in some cases, yeah, like you were talking about the soccer game, yeah, you kind of got to finish the soccer game. Like, I get that. But in instances where you can be more malleable, I believe that showing your child that you trust what they are saying and how they are feeling and what they are asking of you allows the child to learn how to trust themselves.
Mm.
And in the generation of helicopter parenting, which we are still recovering from, quite frankly, with what a lot of our kids are dealing with academic achievement pressure, et cetera. When we tell our child to go against what is inside of them or what their needs are, we're basically saying, I don't trust you.
Mm.
You shouldn't trust you. That's the message. And so, in as many opportunities as we can, we need to let go and let them figure it out and trust them. And I'm not saying on all things. Of course, our kids need support, and it's going to come down to what is important to you as a parent. And, but like here's an example. If your kid is coming home with C's and D's, you can't really trust them in that instance right there. You have to help them get back on track. And so it's kind of maneuvering where you can and can't. And I think that as many opportunities as you can give your child to trust themselves, you are helping them toward adulthood. Because if they can't trust themselves, they're not going to be able to get out into that world.
Right, right. And then who are they following, right? If they're so used to you guiding and helping, and then they're out in college or they're out in the real world, who are they following if they're so used to following?
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and going back to your C's and D's, I have to say, for those parents that are there,
Mhm.
my son did come home with a math grade that was not ideal. We'll just leave it at that. And I said to him, because he's kind of, if he doesn't think it's important, he has to have a reason. Like, why am I doing this? And he's not actually always wrong, which is the hard part. I'm like, I have no good reason why you have to do this, honestly. But I did say to him, I said, listen, I know you can do more. If it's one thing if you were studying and got that grade, it's another thing when you're just not really doing anything because you don't think it's important and got that grade. So here's your choices. You could bump up your grade. I'm going to give you a month. you can bump up that grade on your own without any assistance, or you're going to go to the extra help that your teacher offers at school on Tuesday mornings, if you don't. And so I kind of gave him a trust of a month to see what he could do. And I have to say, he's had a B since.
Wow.
And I don't know if that's just because he doesn't want to go in early or something changed, but either way, sometimes we can also take those instances and give them an opportunity, maybe.
Well, and I think that's exactly what you did. I think that clearly there must be a value system in your home, that there are certain expectations about school, not necessarily what the grade is, what the outcome is, but what the process has been. I mean, it's one thing if the kid is working and working and working, and you're seeing it, and they're going to see their teacher, and then there's a grade that is unfavorable. That's a lot different from a kid who's not meeting expectations in the home about, your job is school right now, so what you got to do. But the fact that you gave him a choice, here's one thing you could do or another thing you can do, that right there is showing him, I trust you to figure this out. I'm supporting you in a way by giving you some options maybe that you hadn't thought of, or that weren't as clear for you because of your executive function, still developing X, Y, and Z. But you really did give him kind of, here's what you can do, this or that. And then he decided. So, and you kind of gave him that trust. You gave him the time, you gave him enough time. So I think you basically did that for him. And you empowered him to figure it out. You didn't say, you got to go see your teacher on Tuesday. It was like either or. So I think that empowers our kids.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Again, it goes back to the intrinsic part of it. Yeah, I get that none of them really care about U.S. history. And I get that as a high schooler or whatever. I get it. But there are still these expectations. And so by giving him a way to figure it out on his own, it empowered him.
And that's really one of the biggest gifts I think we can give our kids, when they can do something on their own. I mean, he feels much better about getting a B than he did his other grade, so he actually feels good. So I think when we can empower them and they do it on their own, it's so much more satisfying than like literally sitting with them and dragging them to go see their teacher, dragging them. Are you doing your homework? Right? Are you doing your homework? That's just too much. I don't enjoy that. They don't enjoy that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah.
So when you were writing this book, because you did have a lot of research that you pulled together, and this book took you quite a bit of time to write. Is that right? Because it sounded like your children were younger.
It took a long time. It took about 10 years just on and off with it, and different jobs I was doing and with my kids. And so, yeah, it took some time for sure.
Yeah. So was there an aha moment where something maybe you were learning while you were writing the book that was just like really like, wow, this was such great insight or information?
Yeah, I think that it really comes down to the compassion and really seeing, gentle parenting has been kind of this niche parenting pre-pandemic. And now it's kind of everybody knows about gentle parenting post-pandemic because of all of us as parents really having to learn to get in tune to really help our kids. And I think that for me, I hadn't always been too compassionate to myself, and I was pretty hard on myself and had these expectations. And I thought to myself, I don't want to pass this down to my children. I see, I have been educated by these experts who have, there's studies on compassionate care in hospitals and how patients are affected one way or another if they receive compassion. And so that was kind of the aha for me, that if I want to have these kids who are happy and successful, but really in this day and age now, mentally healthy, then And I have to really practice some positive mental health awareness inside the home. And to me, compassion is something that is easy to incorporate into the home. Um,
Mm.
and so for me, it came to me really wanting my kids to be easier on themselves than I had been as a kid and as a young adult, and to just give them the ability to make mistakes and to be okay about it, and to be failures and to be okay about it. And then also really practicing that self-compassion.
Hmm. Yeah, I love how I think you do it in your car. Did you say on the drive to
Oh, yes.
school?
Yes, yes. Yeah, so look, I think there's lots of chaos that happens in the morning. And I was seeing that with my when they were younger, probably, I don't know, second, third grade, maybe third and fourth grade. And, it was just kind of chaos in the morning. And I just finally said, I got to practice this with these kids. It's got to be more. And so, we are a religious family. We are Catholic, but I believe that, and look at the research shows it. Harvard research, shows that people who are spiritual, not necessarily religious, but spiritual, have better mental health and well-being. And so, um, again, using this science-based information to put it into practice in my home, we did what we call the Van Alden prayer. And it takes us about 10 minutes to get down Van Alden to Ventura to get to school. And it was just a time where I just said, this is where we're going to out loud pray, show our gratitude, say what we're excited about, because joy is just as important via positive psychology research. And so we would all state what we were grateful for, what we were hoping for, and it kind of reset the day. And
Hmm.
um, it's just been a practice now, and they're both 14 and 15, and we do a carpool with another family. And even before we get to the carpool, we'll do our practice of gratitude or our prayer, and it really does shift and reset, and allows for better mental well-being. I just can see it anecdotally with my two kids and myself, and my husband does it too. So
Yeah, we're big meditators over here. And I think we're kind of like you in the sense of we're not necessarily, although I have gone down the deeper meditations for sure, but for the most part, it could be something like we're listening to a meditation, but my husband and I meditate every morning separately. We do our own meditation and we just have our space and we do that. Our kids see us do it all the time. But whenever I feel overwhelmed, I will take 10 minutes and meditate. A lot of times when I go pick up my son from school, there's like a 5-10 minute lag. I will pop on a meditation in the car while I'm just waiting for him. I have done some meditation with my kids, like they'll listen, or we've done like restorative yoga, which feels like meditation because you're just laying there a lot of times. But my son got up and was like, "Oh my God, I feel so good." So they've been very introduced to it. I wouldn't say my daughter goes, sometimes we're like she gets very anxious. She's an anxious kind of kid, and she'll turn to us. She goes, "I'm not meditating," like she like immediately, which is fine. But I
right,
do want to put out there that you're right. It totally shifts my mood. But you can like anything could be meditation. It's
yeah,
it's just literally taking even a minute or two to like sometimes I write stories of what my day is going to look like. What do I want to happen? It's like almost like this visualization of like my dream. Or sometimes it's an actual meditation, but it really could be anything. And I think people get turned off because it seems like you have to be in this really deep place for these effects, and you don't.
oh my God, I love that. And I love that you said that, because that is kind of barrier, I think, for people who are hearing it from people like us, but who haven't yet taken that minute to just try to incorporate it into their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're saying is so important. And I just, if more and more parents can hear this, I just think that they're calm can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's, not the whole day that it'll hold you over, but for, that hour that you're going to need it, or just to reframe the way you're thinking about something. I get lost in my thoughts sometimes and in the stories that I tell myself that aren't even true. And so just saying to myself, why don't you reframe that and rethink about that? And it is just this being mindful. I mean, and like you said, you can do it in so many different ways. I mean, I definitely feel when I'm in the kitchen at night by myself, like they're all, and before they come in, I'm cooking and it's pretty mindful. I'm just kind of in my space.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
yeah, there's a lot of ways to practice this.
Yeah, I'm so for it. So for it. And it makes me more productive. It makes me a better person. And honestly, it lowers my blood pressure. So it's good.
For
Literally,
sure.
I've actually had a blood pressure cuff on, meditated, and it's lower. And I'm like, wow, that's impressive. Well, where can the listeners find you and your book and all your information that you have out there?
Well, I have a website called DonnaTetreault.com where I have lots of my TV segments that are on there if you want to browse that. And then I'm on Instagram at Donna Tetreault and on Twitter at Donna Tetreault. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Perfect. And is there anything else that we haven't shared that you'd like the listeners to know?
Wow, I feel like you covered so much. I guess I just feel that, I think that right now in this moment, a lot of us, are seeing kind of what the pandemic has done to our kids regarding their education, their mental health and well-being. And I think that, there's kind of this charge to, get everybody up to speed again. And I think that just kind of go at your own pace. I think that really listening to your kids and where they are and where you are, and just being really gentle with yourself. I really want parents to be gentle with themselves and know that if they know that they're doing the best that they can, then that's good enough. And the journey continues, and it's just this evolving process, and we're never going to get it perfect. And but when our kids see and know that we're doing the best that we can, that bond is there. They know. Yeah. So just be gentle with yourselves.
Yeah. And I like to always think that not every decision we make is life altering. Like it's going to be okay.
Yes. Yeah. For sure.
Well, thank you. Thank you for this just lovely conversation. I truly, obviously enjoyed your book.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Compassion, acceptance, security, trust, love, and expectation plus education makes up the C.A.S.T.L.E method. If you are interested in learning more about Donna or the C.A.S.T.L E method, visit her website at DonnaTetreault.com.